Welcome back to the AI Word Series. We center on real stories, real lives, and how AI is showing up in business and in lifescape, as I like to say. AI everywhere, all at once. Each word is familiar, often from childhood, but it takes on new meaning in a world shaped by AI hype, leadership pressure, and organizational change. This week, we're focused on the word application. AI in application. More specifically, how is AI shaping our business pilots, use cases, and day-to-day realities? I'm excited to introduce my guest today, Theo Ellis, CEO of Friday Harbor, an Allen Institute AI incubator. Yes, the Paul Allen. Friday Harbor is on a mission to help loan originators at the pre-underwriting stage. I had the pleasure of meeting Theo very early on in his Friday Harbor journey, and you've come a really long way. It's been awesome to watch you bring your vision to reality and impact the business. So thank you for joining us. What else should we know, Theo?
So Friday Harbor is a young company. We're about 2 years old. As you mentioned, our first investor was the Allen Institute for AI Incubator. But we've gone on to scale quite rapidly. So we're now working with over 30 lenders across the country, including 3 of the top 15 independent mortgage banks. So we're one of the few kind of AI native companies out there working at production scale and embracing the messiness of the real world.
You're definitely dealing with the messiness of the real world. And I love how you're bringing the reality to institutions across the country. Congratulations. So let's dive in. When you think of the letters AI, what's the first story or moment that comes to mind when you think of AI in application?
Yeah, so Friday Harbor, for those who aren't familiar with us, essentially what we're doing is helping originating teams put together clean, complete, compliant files from the start. But we're not a point of sale. So we're not actually facing a consumer. We're just kind of working with whatever the borrower has provided you and helping identify issues, opportunities so that originators can ask the right questions and kind of put together a clean file from the start. That's more likely to be a one-touch underwrite. That's more likely to get that borrower to pull through, get them cleared close sooner, et cetera. So we're dealing with kind of applications day in, day out in their messiest state. And, we see this all day long. I mean, one thing that comes to mind for me is that borrowers they don't know what they don't know, right? Like in theory, it's easy to say, oh, originators, give borrowers a checklist, tell them everything they're going to need up front and, keep them up to date and don't bother them for those last minute docs, a week before closing. It's hard to do that because borrowers don't necessarily know what's actually important. And sometimes they gloss over. So, we saw an application recently where a borrower, made a declaration about, whether their home was site built versus manufactured that completely fundamentally impacted the sellability of the loan. The declaration turned out to be incorrect. The borrower didn't really know the importance of this declaration.
It's been part terminology, right? And having a borrower understand what we in the mortgage industry, we don't even realize some of the terminology that we use that's so common to us, but foreign to those who might be sitting in front of us.
Exactly. And AI helps us pick up those discrepancies much faster than, but wait a second, I have an appraisal and I actually see this as a manufactured home. Crap, but now I have to see if the LTV works. I might surprise this borrower with some bad news, catch these things immediately. In our case, we saw immediately in a credit report a discrepancy between the declarations on the application and what we saw in the previous financing for that home. And what could have been a real problem in relationship management later was something that was spotted up front, dealt with very quickly, and led to a successful borrower experience. So for me, the application phase is the best place to use AI in the mortgage industry because that is when you are dealing with borrowers who don't know what they don't know, but they can give you the raw material of their life, right? They can give you, here are my bank statements, here's everything about me. And AI allows you to kind of find that needle in the haystack, that thing that's going to trip up the loan a week or two from now, because every single loan has some kind of edge case that's going to trip up a loan. Find those as early as possible so that you can put together a complete and accurate application from the start.
Well, you just used another word, Theo, that jumped there for me for just a second. You used the terminology edge case.
Yeah.
Right? So in the context of AI, it's a regularly used term on the AI side of the equation. But what's it mean in relationship to a loan application?
Yeah. So, there's that Tolstoy, Anna Karenina, every happy family is alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Most applications, if we're honest with ourselves, are unhappy in some way, right? Like most loan applications have something about them that makes them quirky, right? Okay, I'm paying my my mother-in-law's car payment, or I have a non-occupying co-borrower, or I have a student loan payment that I've had in deferment. There's always something about a loan that kind of makes it a little tricky, or hey, I left out a page in a document, and like, right, there's always something that you kind of find that makes this not a clean, you straight through borrower provided all the documents, one touch underwrite file.
Well, and I
But you
think
don't know that edge cases.
the point that it's not a, it's a lot, right? And we from an underwriting perspective and from an ultimate delivery perspective for a banking side of the equation, we need to fit certain criteria. We need to package it up.
Yeah.
It needs to be a pretty box with a bow on top. Clients don't fit that, right? Like, I mean,
That's a good way to put it. Like, think about what what you're trying to do in the mortgage industry, which is like you have something like a MISMO standard. Right? You're trying to fit a human being into like a kind of set of standards. Here's here's the data we use to represent this person and their financial situation. And you're trying to cram it in there. It's like, well, it's kind of messy. They're a human being. They have all these things without them. They took a month off from work for whatever reason a year ago. Trying to fit that into this MISMO box, this kind of data set box in a way that is compliant with how the guidelines tell you to do. That's the magic of underwriting, right? That's what the underwriter is trying to do is, okay, well, what do the rules say about how I can represent this data? Have they actually validated this in a way that the guidelines, the ultimate buyer of this loan is going to permit me to?
so in essence, what you're utilizing artificial intelligence for through various methodologies behind the curtain, so to speak, is bringing those variables up so that if there is an instance that says, well, hey, wait, there's an extra debt on the credit report, or you gave me the document, the bank statement says that there's 4 pages. Well, we only have 3 things. And sometimes they're little things, right? And in some cases, I think even as I just say the bank statement scenario, in some loans, you're going to incorporate a single source or an entity direct validation, or in other cases, people are going to supply pay stubs and W-2s or tax returns, whatever those variables happen to be. And as I rattle off all of those things, it speaks to the complexity of any given file, even if it's a clean file.
It's a clean file. Did the homeowner's insurance policy have the right name, the address, and the start date on it, right? Trivial, like there's just millions of things that can go wrong.
And so talk a little bit about how you're using artificial intelligence to bring those things to the surface. I like to say earlier and more often, in essence, with the objective of when the loan goes to underwriting, that the underwriter when they go through their checks, those checks should go more quickly, and there should be fewer flags that would be raised because in essence the flags would have been raised prior to underwriting submission.
Yeah, so we're at the end of the day, we're really trying to meet lenders and originators where they are, right? We're not trying to add new steps to the process. So there's a lot of things we do out of the box, which we just kind of say, like, don't even worry about it. Like, for instance, we're categorizing documents, we're extracting the data from them. None of that needs to happen before it hits Friday Harbor. All we're doing is pushing back preliminary conditions, and those can live natively in the lender's loan origination system, or they can be seen in our UI. And we're just basically finding these things which can trip up a loan. Hey, the child support that they mentioned in the application is not the child support we actually see, in the settlement. So like, and you flag these things, and there can be 5, 10 of these in a given loan, clean those up. And what you're more likely to give to that underwriter is going to be, a one-touch underwrite file. Similar with income, right? Like sometimes we're actually discovering opportunities in income, right? Like borrowers that are kind of on the bubble, but you actually probably could consider this over time, whatever it is. Or like there's often opportunities which maybe less experienced LOs, time-pressed LOs don't necessarily ask for that additional document, which could actually get you a bit more income qualified and maybe get this borrower over the bubble. So we're trying to just provide the raw insights and abstract away all the what it takes to get to that insight.
And I think I'd be curious as to what you think, because what your experience is in relationship to the LO interaction. And, not unlike humans across the board, we have humans that are naturally more detail oriented, and we have humans that are less detail oriented, which doesn't make them better or worse at their job, but it does make a file look different.
Yeah.
So how are you seeing the real life that loan officer that already has that detail orientation versus the one who needs that extra support, in essence, an LO assist, for lack of a better description? How are you seeing that play through to the value for both sides of that personality type?
That's a really good question. I don't think there's like a one size fits all answer either for LOs or even for lenders. Like lenders have different styles. Some lenders are, all in on using AI to actually communicate with borrowers and reach out to them and try to take an application that way. Then others are saying, no, human touch is our value add. That's what we do. Like we don't
Right.
want to, we want to like completely separate that. So I don't think there's a one size fits all answer. I do think that the general trend is towards, if you are a borrower facing LO, especially if you're in a kind of distributed retail environment where a lot of your value is building those relationships with referral partners and bringing your expertise and kind of that emotional support, using tools like Friday Harbor, using AI tools to provide that lift so you have more time is extremely valuable. There are LOs who love to get in the weeds, who love to talk about structuring. And that's a completely valid way to work a loan file. To us, it usually manifests itself in terms of who's the user of Friday Harbor. So for the former, the kind of like just more relationship driven loan officer, it's usually someone on their team who's using us and kind of we're guiding a lot of the borrower follow up. But for the more like detail oriented, I want to get into every file, I want to calculate income by hand. They're often some of the happiest users of Friday Harbor because they can use our sandbox features to kind of see, okay, could I get some more income here? Do I actually need to use this bank statement to qualify? Do I actually need to include this co-borrower? Can I qualify without them? So there's kind of value for both. To me, it's like, who's the hands on it? At the end of the day, I think that the general trend of the industry is towards the humans focusing on the human connection, building relationships, prospecting, sales and marketing, emotional support. As we always say, this is the largest financial transaction in most people's lives, and they want to be talking to an expert who's reassuring them they're doing it right.
Well, can we go there for just 1 second? And again, because that a lot of my focus tends to be in the governance and the responsible AI space, which I know is near and dear to your heart as well. Just talk through big picture. How are you incorporating the responsible AI principles and trustworthy AI, which as we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, trustworthy AI being the overarching umbrella that incorporates a governance system to be able to fall within the guidelines. And how do we create that trust, that trust with your system?
And I think this is something you and I were talking about at MBA in New Jersey a few weeks ago. One of the big opportunities we have with modern AI, when I say that, I mean large language model type AI,
which is generative.
Yeah, exactly. Which are all kind of just different frameworks of working with the kind of raw technology of LLMs. The big gap between LLMs and kind of traditional machine learning, which is something I've been working in the field of in fintech ML for a long time. The big jump is you've gone from a world of models that are inherently black boxes that just give you kind of predictions. That's the old world of ML, to models that are actually designed to try to express in human language, what it thinks is most likely, right? So, and that actually really opens up the opportunity to more explainable systems than we have when we're just human driven. So I actually think there's an opportunity with LLM driven systems, whether they're generating, content, whether they're agentic, meaning they're using kind of LLMs within themselves in a kind of loop and using tools to actually provide more explainability, more auditability. Okay, this is the document where I sourced this data from. This is why, this is the guideline I think applies. And here's why, like providing all that reasoning so that you can kind of see the chain of thought and go, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Or like, wait, no, why are you pulling it from this outdated credit report? I have a more recent credit report versus traditional machine learning, black box, borrowers, approved, declined, or, manual underwrite, but I have no understanding of why, right? Like that's kind of gone, I think. And I think we should be architecting technology now to provide that visibility, that auditability, because we have that capability.
Well, and I think you strike on a great point, though. It is really the infrastructure and how it's set up that gives you that insight or not. And the not is where the greater layers of risk or potential regulatory concern are ready and valid conversations. So you've suggested, you make me smile. We often say the same words, one size doesn't fit all. The same is true in relationship to the governance side of the equation. Well, the principles and the practices should be consistent in a foundation. How an organization is able to identify which methodology and which process goes along with each use case is part of the equation and part of that variable that needs to be worked out from an organizational perspective.
Yeah.
We're just about at time, and we'd like to close on a positive or a fun note. Not that of what we're talking about hasn't been fun for us. I don't know about others. So in terms of your AI use, whether it be personal, professional? What are you seeing something fun or cool that you've worked on recently?
So I just filed taxes
Huh?
on Sunday.
You were right. Yep.
Oh yeah, a few days early, Sunday night, right? With a little breathing room. My wife not surprised. She gave me a heads up. We were going to have some Schedule C income from her side gig. She's a full-time brand management professional, but she does like as a side hustle. She does this thing where she goes to thrift stores, picks out what she thinks are finds, and then resells them online on various marketplaces. And kind of there's a big arbitrage, right? She goes there as soon as the new clothes drop. And so we're like, oh, actually, you made a decent amount of money. We're going to pay some taxes on this year. So yeah, exactly. And I was asking about how she does it, and like, she uses a ton of AI. So she's using AI when she goes to the thrift store to look up brands she doesn't know, kind of see, oh, this piece of clothing, how much is it selling for? When did it come out? What season was it? What's it actually called? And then when she lists it online, she can, you go to a thrift store, you don't know what you're looking at. She has her listing on her site, and it's like this brand, this outfit, this season, with like the original stock photos. So she's like, it's this arbitrage between the thrift store, doesn't really know what this thing is. And like, oh, this is actually an item. She has so many items she's found for like, 10, $20, which sell for hundreds of dollars online, right? Because they're like last season.
There are a lot of reduce and reuse friends in the audience here. So if she has a website, feel free to share it because we'd love to support her efforts there too.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. Yeah. She's selling it on Poshmark. I don't remember her store name, but yeah.
Well, lots of Poshmark users that are joining us along the way too. So it's definitely fun, and we'll have to see if we can't find her along the way. Well, thank you for joining me today, Theo. It's always a pleasure. Yeah. Great fun to connect and appreciate the work you're doing. Thank you for leaping into possible.
Thank you.